Right. Good afternoon. So before we start, generate correct motivation. So having seen that we have incredible potential this morning, and seeing the benefits of reliance on a virtuous friend as being a kind of initial aspect of the path, but for, as you can see, Lam-Rim is quite an advanced level of practice, right? So for those who already have some understanding of the Lam-Rim and have studied the related topics of the Lam-Rim, then this has been explained, right? The reliance on the virtuous friend, So, and then, what I said this morning, when we talk about the benefits, that if you really want to progress quickly, then there's a great purpose to that, right? If you, or you could think that all beings are wandering around in cyclic existence, and in order to move fast, for that purpose, I have to practice correct reliance, right? So then it becomes a very sophisticated aspect of reliance, because the main motivation is, of course, bodhicitta, because the whole Lam-Rim, as we know, is based on the great scope. So if you then have bodhicitta as your main motivation, then for that purpose, I have to have correct reliance on the virtuous friend, So that's one aspect that we try to look at, and then it just goes quicker. That's very clear. That's when Joji Atisha came to Tibet, and although Buddhism already spread in different directions, but people said, asked Atisha, why do we don't produce so many beings with realizations? And then Atisha said, because you see the teacher as in an ordinary, you see the teacher as being ordinary, So that's kind of an important statement. The great master of, the Nalanda tradition said, right, that then, of course, you get knowledge, understanding, but the realizations is the next step. Knowledge, understanding of the Buddha's doctrine is not too difficult, even for a non-Buddhist, right? Same, I talked many times before, Carlo Rovelli and people like that. They have a very similar understanding than the Prasangika view of emptiness and dependent origination, right? Very similar, But when it comes to the realization, that's a different story, right? Then you need quite some causes and conditions to be present, and that's also true for the topics of the Lam-Rim, that an intellectual understanding is not too difficult to get, right? But to really get the realizations, and to get the realizations quickly, then reliance on the virtuous friend seems to be quite essential, Eventually you get it, but if you just want to go quicker, then that's kind of, if you then motivate yourself with bodhicitta, then you take that direction, and then things can go quicker, So as we looked at the benefits of the correct reliance, so then after having seen the benefits, then the next point is the drawbacks, but you can read it for yourself in the various Lam-Rim texts, And after that, then, okay, if you're convinced about the benefits, then how do we rely upon the virtuous friend to the mind, or to the mind training, and to behavior, as we normally say, or activity, you could say, So then initially to training the mind, then it talks about, first of all, generating faith in the virtuous friend, right? Faith that is based on reasoning. We know, we went many times over the different types of faith. We have the faith of conviction, and we have the clarifying faith, and the wishing faith. So with good devotion, it's very similar. You contemplate the qualities, and then you generate this faith of conviction, right? And that's the virtuous friend has all the qualities, and because of that you can trust, because the motivation is one of the qualities there, So then you see that the faith of conviction is not just blind faith in the teacher, right? It's based on reasoning, yeah? So you analyze by seeing the different qualities and the 4 points as we go over, and then you come to the conclusion, okay, yes, it makes sense to say that the teacher is a Buddha, or you could say it makes sense, and that's Lama Tsongkhapa put more emphasis on that, not to see the faults in the teacher, right? Because if you don't see the faults, then there is more blessings, and also you will follow the advice, right? That's very clear. So either tradition, different traditions you follow. That's why Lama Tsongkhapa put mainly the emphasis of not seeing the faults, and then more experiential lineages that came after. Then they use the aspect of the Vajrayana to see the teacher as a Buddha, and then of course you don't see faults, and also what we talked about this morning is that the teachers, the Buddhas, so to say, they cannot emanate in a kind of aspect that is lower than yourself, because you won't generate faith. They cannot emanate in a very pure aspect, because you cannot meet that pure aspect because of your karma. Yeah. So they emanate in a way that we can just completely relate to them. Yeah, just similar to us. That's what the Buddhas do. They emanate those kind of aspects. And then certain teachers have other qualities, other teachers have other qualities. And then in the Kasa, in the Sharma Pandita Lam-Rim, there it explains that because of that, different teachers have different aspects. Because showing an ordinary aspect, they cannot teach like the Buddha. Yeah, they have to teach according to a particular level of ordinary kind of reality, so to say. So that means that at the time of the Buddha, then, the Buddha just spoke one language or one teaching, and everybody understood exactly according to their wishes, right? So at the time of the Buddha, there was a time of fruition, direct fruition, meaning people were very pure, that's why they could be there, and then the Buddha taught, and they just realized straight away the realizations of the path. Yeah, so that's kind of the period of manifest fruition, you could say. That period is gone, and now we in the second period, more or less you could say, the period of people have to depend on teachings and elaborate teachings and elaborate instructions, and then engage into the practice, and then get realizations, right? So we in that period. And that period will also come to an end, and then you go to in a period of that there's only very few that's actually the period of the transmissions, as we say, that only the mere transmissions exist to a certain extent, and then there's very few people who put it into practice, and even very fewer than that who get the realizations. Yeah, that's the third period, and that will come up very soon. And then after that is the period of only the signs, like, oh, I'm a Buddhist, oh, I have a Buddhist text, oh, I have a Buddhist statue, but nothing more than that. And we see that in other traditions as well. There's a degeneration happening, and people, even in Buddhism, if you go to places like Kasa, Singapore, Taiwan, as many people go, like on Sunday, they go to the temple, say Nama Amutafu, and offer a kind of incense, and then go home, and that's their Buddhist practice, So yeah, that's going to happen, and then eventually nothing is left, So we're very lucky to be born in a time that there's still explanations and still people practice, and still possibility to get realizations, right? Yeah. So yeah, then the teachers, they show these different aspects, because one teacher cannot teach everything like a Buddha could do. So they have the ordinary aspects, so that's why different teachers have different aspects. Yeah, you can think that if you have one root guru or one main teacher, like His Holiness Dalai Lama, for example, that you can see that as your main teacher. And then all the other teachers you can think are emanations of that. Yeah? Or you can think that every teacher is an emanation of the Buddha, or that's because if you see the teacher as the Buddha, then there's more blessing, and you don't see faults, right? That's the reason behind generating faith, and then you generate a faith of conviction, right? That's one aspect, and then contemplating the qualities more, you generate this clarifying faith, right? That clears up the mind. If you talk about the qualities of others, those conversations are very uplifting. Yeah. If you talk about the faults of others, then the conversation is very kind of, a little bit, the mind gets a bit down and unhappy, But if you talk about the qualities of others, in particular beings that lead you to liberation and enlightenment, and then it's very uplifting. If you sometimes talk with other students and talk about qualities of different teachers, like His Holiness Lama Zopa Rinpoche, it's very inspiring, and you can sometimes feel there's blessing, right? So that's what we call the clarifying faith, And then if you think that the teacher is the Buddha, then you generate a wish to become like that, to become like His Holiness Dalai Lama, for example, to become like Gyamtse Lama Zopa Rinpoche, right? So that's kind of the wishing faith. Yeah, so you can see that the three faiths you can apply to reliance on the virtuous friend, right? Yeah. So first of all, in order not to see the faults, and then we receive more blessings, and then we create courses for meeting the Buddhas. As I said, if you achieve the Chogyung Tingezin, the continuing, the concentration of the Dharma, or the continuation of the concentration of the Dharma on the part of accumulation, yeah, then you actually receive teachings from emanation bodies. And at the moment we don't have that yet, so we have to rely upon ordinary aspects. And then when you achieve the Arya paths, you receive teachings from enjoyment bodies, right? So you can see that eventually you're going to receive teachings from emanation bodies and enjoyment bodies. And to go to that direction, if you see your current teachers after examining them properly, right? First you examine, see if they have the right qualities and seeing if they benefit your mind or not, and then only you can make a decision. Oh, this is my teacher, right? Or are you feel ready? You have to check that in great depth. Sometimes you can check for years. Yeah. But yeah, there's one story about one person who checked the teacher for 12 years. And then the teacher said after 12, then he went to the teacher, I checked you for 12 years, please be my teacher. And then the teacher said, no, wait, I have to check you for 12 years. Yeah. Or the teacher disappeared and went into a retreat for the rest of his life, Yeah. So you have to see, right? Sometimes you have to take time, but also you have to be realistic, Yeah. So then if you then want to go that path, then it's important to have correct reliance. So that correct reliance, if you want to get the benefits, then you try to see the teacher without faults, as been explained in the Lam-Rim Chemo and the middle-length Lam-Rim. And then the way to do that is to think that the teacher is actual Buddha, right? So that's kind of what we try to generate in our mind. So how do we do that? By seeing, because the Buddha himself, in the sutras, there's a story about Ananda asking the Buddha, what do we do, after the Buddha's passing? And then the Buddha said, I will emanate in the form of teachers, right? So in the sutra system, it's very clear. And in the Vajrayana, there's even more quotations like that, right? That the Buddhas emanate in various aspects to benefit beings. In ordinary aspects, beings can relate to, because we cannot directly see the Buddhas, right? So the first step is that the Buddha said, I will emanate in the form of a teacher, yeah, and and the Buddha never lies. If you analyze the Buddha and you analyze the second chapter of Pramanavartika, then you know why the Buddha is a valid person, So yeah, that's the Buddha said himself. And also reasoning. If you think that all Buddhas they became Buddhas in order to lead sentient beings to enlightenment, then of course they will emanate in order to benefit beings, right? Yeah. So that's kind of, from the point of reasoning and scriptural reference, you can look at different angles that, why is the teacher a Buddha or so. And if you look at the qualities rather than the faults, then you will easily put the things into practice, right? So if the teacher explains certain aspect of the Lam-Rim, then you think, wow, yes, if it comes from a person you can trust, then you put it into practice, right? Yeah. So, So that's kind of a few aspects you can think. The first step that the Buddha has said himself, he will emanate in the form of ordinary teachers, and also, if you're Buddha, that's the only thing you want to do, right? So that's various aspects. And then also, you can think about other reasons, especially if you combine it with, the Vajrayana, that if Buddhas, if the teachers are accomplished, then they generate this kind of bodies like the enjoyment, the illusory body, and then at the end of the practice, they dissolve it back into ordinary aggregates to communicate, right? So there's kind of interesting aspects to that. So that's the first point that the Buddha himself said, The second point is that the teachers are engaging in activities. If you see His Holiness Dalai Lama and Lama Zopa Rinpoche's incredible, vast activities, for sentient beings and for the Dharma. Not only this life, for many lifetimes. If you see His Holiness working so hard, we know the 14 Dalai Lamas, but if you go back to the time of the Buddha, as Bodhisattva Avalokitesvara, you come to like 64, to certain interpretations, different emanations, right? Yeah, and the Buddhist kings, His Holiness sometimes says himself that he feels very close to Somsa Kampo and things like that, right? So that's kind of a sign that they work so much, so hard, constantly, for the Buddha Dharma and for the beings, sentient beings. So then you can see that at the present time, there are still Buddhas like that active, right? So the second point is that they engage in the activities of the Buddhas, because if His Holiness Dalai Lama and Lama Zopa Rinpoche and those other great masters, if they're not Buddhas, then who are Buddhas, right? Yeah, so that's kind of to see their activities and then relate to that, to the activities that are possible within the karma we have, because they do exactly that. Whatever is possible, they use that opportunity, And then, in the present time, there's still Buddhas and Bodhisattvas among us. And that's the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas who can emanate if you study the grounds and paths. Even if your teacher is not in reality a Buddha, but it could also be an emanation of a Bodhisattva or high realized being, right? Yeah. So, and then still, if you see them as a teacher, as a Buddha, then they can earn great benefit. That what just talked about. They don't see the faults; they only see the qualities, and then you create courses to actually meet these emanation bodies, and eventually, as Arya beings, take teachings from enjoyment bodies, right? Yeah. So that's kind of three reasons, right? And then the fourth one is that our own appearance we cannot trust. And that's very clear. We know that, our appearance is just not really reality. It's very subjective. Only direct perception of emptiness, is non-mistaken. All other forms of perception are mistaken, right? And the way we look at people in our day-to-day life, exactly the same thing. We think this person is this or that because of this or that, but we only see physical and verbal behaviors, right? We never really, unless you have clairvoyance, we never really see the mind of others, So same with the teacher, being the Buddha, you don't really see the qualities of the mind, so you only have to make your conclusions based on what you see physically and verbal activities, right? So, and that is also related with, how we see things karmically, So things are, there's many stories like, Naropa, he saw Tilopa frying fish alive or some, like that. And Matipa saw Sharari killing pigs, So they saw things like that, But yeah, that our own appearance we cannot really trust, So there's many stories in the or the Getso, Suba, the student of Nakchoba, Kaza, Nakchoba, who was going into retreat because the teacher went already, and then there was this lady, remember, with Kaza, with how do you call that, the scenes, huh? Leprosy, and then he had so much compassion, and she said, "Please bring me to the other side of the river," And then he instead of going straight into retreat, he had so much compassion, so he thought, "Okay, I do that for you." And then he took her on his shoulders, and then halfway through the river, she transformed into Vajrayogini, and he was taken to the Pure Lands. Right? So we don't know. Our appearance, we just don't know. And as once was Lam Rinpoche on the way to Bodhgaya, stopped the car. It was a little village with one lady, girls actually, just girls, one girl in the center, and all the children around it. And Rinpoche took flowers out of the car, went there to the girl, circumlated three times, offered flowers, didn't say anything, and back to the car to Bodhgaya. So then you think, why would Rinpoche do something like that, right? So that means that for us, ordinary, we just see a village girl, right? But yeah, Rinpoche saw something else, So there's many. If you go to pilgrimage places, you see always people who hang out there and act very strange and ask for some money or something. But you never know. You really never know who's there. Also, Lama Rinpoche, one of His Holiness Dalai Lama's own teacher, he was just sitting with the Bergas in Bodhgaya on the floor in the dust. So sometimes you just don't know, right? Our own perceptions we cannot trust. So that's kind of a few aspects you can look at. So let's do contemplation on those points. That to see that the Buddha said himself he will emanate in the form of teachers in ordinary aspect, and they are engaging in the activities of the Buddhas, and as you can see, what the Holiness Dalai Lama and Kyabje Lama Zopa Rinpoche did, and in the present time, there are still Buddhas and Bodhisattvas among us, right? And we cannot trust our own perception. So let's do a contemplation on these 4 points. So before we do that, maybe first we do the counting of the breath. So as a means to develop concentration, and then based on that we do the visualization and then the analytical meditation. So first count the breath from 1 to 10, and then start over counting. And make sure you have the 2 mental factors, alertness and mindfulness, there in order to to be aware if the mind goes out. When you hear something or when you think about something, and then mindfulness, you bring your mind back to the counting of the breath. So let's do that for about a minute or two. So then, when the mind is settled down a bit, then develops a concentration. Imagine in front Sakyamuni Buddha, right? There's a throne bordered by snow lions, and on top of that is this lotus, sun and moon disk. On top of that is seated Guru Sakyamuni Buddha, right? Full lotus position, right hand on his right knee, touching the moon disk, and left also banging bowl filled with nectar. And he wears the robes of a fully ordained monk and made out of golden nectar light, the whole image like three-dimensional, right? And a very peaceful, smiling face. Now, if the visualization is still a bit challenging, then just imagine, have the faith that Guru Buddha is actually there in front of yourself, right? And then surrounding yourself, all the beings of the 6 realms, undergoing the intense suffering constantly. There's no escape because of the all-pervasive aspect of suffering, right? Every moment they undergo suffering. If not manifest, then the potential for the next moment to experience suffering is there. You know? So look at that and think they're completely lost. And it's your responsibility to do something about this. And not just do something about it, but to move quick in order to really help them. You know, so and for that purpose we need to have correct reliance on the virtuous friend. You know, so based on that, make strong requests to Guru Buddha in front to bestow blessings, inspirations to get that realization. Yeah. So make mentally a request for yourself. Yeah. And then Guru Buddha in front is very pleased, and then from his heart comes white nectar light to your crown, and the crown of all beings, surrounding yourself, and this purifies all negative karma, pacifies all obstacles, in particular the obstacle that prevents you from realizing correct reliance or Guru devotion. Yeah, so I do this visualization of the white light for about a minute or so. Yeah, half a minute. Yeah. And think you're completely filled with this white nectar light here, completely purified. And then with the same intention again, make a request to the Buddha in front, and this time yellow nectar light comes from the heart of the Guru Buddha to your crown and all beings, and this bestows all the realization of the Lam-Rim, and in particular the realization of Guru devotion, right? So so do this visualization, yellow light also for about half a minute or a minute or so, yeah. And then think you're completely filled with this yellowish nectar light, and the mind is actually has attained, you could think the mind has obtained the blessing of getting the realization of good devotion, or very close to that, Either of those two ways you can think. And then we do the actual analytical meditation. So you see that if you don't see faults in the teacher, you will straight away follow the instructions, right? If you trust the teacher like that, So after examining well, then if you then don't see any faults and only see the qualities, you will straight away follow the advice, right? And on top of that, if you can see the teacher as Buddha, then there's blessings to be received, and you create courses for meeting actually Buddhas, right? So analyze these points first. That if you don't see faults, that you will straight away follow the advice, and if you see them as actual Buddha, then you create courses to receive teachings of Buddhas in the future, on the part of accumulation, for example, and the Arya paths, So look at those two aspects. Analyze it for yourself for about a minute or two. And then we go to the 4 points, right? That the Buddha himself said that he will emanate in ordinary aspects, and that's the only way we can relate to. And you can think about stories like Asanga and who couldn't see Maitreya initially, right? So we need to depend initially to an ordinary aspect to relate to, and then understand that that's the only way the Buddhas can communicate with us, right? To show an ordinary aspect. So in that way, try to see the reasons behind why the Buddha said, I will emanate in the form of ordinary aspects as teachers, right? So try to see from that point of view that the teachers, you decide over you, had a discriminating factor. It's my teacher that actually they could be these emanations, right? Yeah, so look on that the teacher is a Buddha, or because of those reasons that the Buddha said, and that's the only way they can communicate with us in ordinary aspect, So analyze that for yourself for about a minute or so. And then try to see that they engage in activities of the Buddhas, right? Where else do we see the activities of the Buddha? You know, they teach us, they engage in various activities to benefit beings and the Buddha Dharma, like His Holiness and Gyamtse Lama Zopa Rinpoche did, you know. So see that other than their activities, there is no other activities to be seen, right? So that means then they engage in activities of the Buddhas. They teach us, they work for the various projects to benefit beings and the Dharma and preserve the Dharma in various ways, you know. So see, they actually engage exactly in the activities, or they are the manifestations of the activities of the Buddhas, right? Separate from that, we cannot see any other activities of the Buddhas, isn't it? To analyze that aspect also for about a minute or so. And then think about the third point, that the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, they still among us, right? That's the only reason why they became Buddha, is to help us. And that's why the Bodhisattvas on the path try to help beings, right? So if they still among us to help us, then the best way to do that is to show the aspect of a teacher, right? To lead us. So from that point of view also look at the teacher. This could be an emanation, right? Because the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are among us, and the only way to benefit us, the best way to do that, is to teach us the Lam-Rim and to teach us the related topics and to lead us in that way and to liberation and enlightenment, right? So look at those points, analyze those points for yourself also for about a minute or so. And then think that what we perceive is that ordinary aspect that appears to us. That is just a subjective aspect of our mind, right? We only see the physical and verbal actions of the guru, but we don't really see their minds, So, and what appears to us is, generally speaking, influenced by our previous habituation patterns of afflictions and particularly ignorance, So we cannot always trust our own perception, right? So from that angle also, although we might see faults, but in general speaking, seeing faults in people, that might not always be the case. It can also be a very subjective aspect in our mind, right? So see that we sometimes cannot always trust our own perceptions, right? So analyze that aspect as well in relation to the teacher. Might be an emanation, right? Yeah, so analyze that also for about a minute. And then try to come to a conclusion that sees that the Buddha and the Buddhas in general will emanate in ordinary aspects. They said and themselves, and if our teachers are not emanations, then what is an emanation, right? And they engage in the various activities of the Buddhas, and separate from their activities, we cannot see any other activities of the Buddhas, right? And that there's still Buddhas and Bodhisattvas among us, and if they are not Buddhas or Bodhisattvas, then who else is? See that our own perception is just very limited, So try to come to the conclusion that they can be as well, be emanations, right? So come to that kind of conclusion and then focus on that for about half a minute. Yeah, so then we can stop and break for a minute or so. Yeah. Especially the last one. Sometimes you don't know, When I first met, Lama Kunchok, Then in Singapore, he had stomach cancer at that time, and had no stomach anymore, right? So then he was just eating tukpa, kind of how you call this, food in a grinder, So I didn't know. I just thought it's a geshe from Sarah, and I didn't know about his history of being a meditator and things like that. So we had dinner one day, because I went to Singapore for my visa, because those days Singapore was the place to get a 5-year one, so 5-year student visa. So I went, and then we met a few times over meals, and then I didn't know. So I thought, the way he was talking, I thought, he must be kind of a real Kadamba-style geshe, otherwise you cannot talk like that if you don't have a stomach anymore and joke around and, gossip about things in Sera. Laughter and things like that. But I didn't know. It was just, Kadamba geshe. But then when he passed away, you saw what he produced, the relics, and then you hear the stories, and then you start to see my perception was kind of completely wrong, At that time I hadn't taken him as a teacher because I just didn't know him. But sometimes it's like that, that we sometimes just don't know. And then, then our perception, sometimes we don't have a clue. Same with Lama Zopa Rinpoche's visions or His Holiness, some people who criticized His Holiness, or even the Buddha had people who didn't really, thought he was an enlightened being or special, right? Yeah, so same with His Holiness Dalai Lama, same thing. So then you see that what appears to us is, same with Lama Zopa Rinpoche. If you just look at activities and never sleeping and 24/7, he must be, if not a Buddha, a very highly realized bodhisattva, right? It's very clear, But then sometimes to others it appears like, but then you can see that our own appearance is very subjective and very much related with influence. Same with His Holiness, we see His Holiness in the form as a fully ordained monk, most of us, but other people don't see that. And there's people who see His Holiness sometimes in forearm charismatic aspect, Or Kandala, if you talk with Kandala, for example, and have some conversations about how she sees, that's completely different dimension, it's very interesting. So, I don't know if you ever had a conversation with Kandala, because, last time in London we talked quite a bit during meals, and she told very amazing stories. She just lives in a different dimension, it's very interesting. So then you see how a pure being actually sees other people, or how a pure being actually sees things, For us it's just very ordinary, you see. So then, if you get this pure vision, then blessings are there, That's very impressive. Then you can see. Then you can really progress quickly on the path. That's quite clear. So that's why we meditate on these points, right? Not just for because it's a tradition or something like that. Because we want to get the realizations quicker, right? That's exactly why. If you look at the activities of the different masters of the past, it's mind-boggling, If they're not emanations, then it's very difficult to do that, If you see His Holiness Lama Zopa Rinpoche's vast activities, ordinary beings cannot do that, right? That's pretty clear, So looking at that aspect and then contemplating these points, and then try to see them as Buddhas, and then you do Guru Yoga or things like that, or you're close to them, then there's blessing, and then the mind can move. So for that purpose we're doing this, it's kind of to move the mind into the Lam-Rim, to get the realizations, So if you see, see them in that way, then that's exactly why it's been advised to us to do that, Then things move and things go quick. So that's kind of why we do that, so maybe we combine the benefits with these points again, to first contemplate the benefits and then see there's a need for receiving blessings based on the faith we discussed, and then that moves the mind, and that's exactly why we try to see the teacher in that way, to move faster on the path. So again we do that contemplation then. So imagine, same thing, we can visualize the Buddha in front, but if you imagine, because the Buddhas are actually there, right? The Buddhas are there, we cannot see them, so that's why we visualize them. But if you have strong faith, they're there, and then the visualization are not just a visualization; it's actual reality. You know. So try to do that. You know, visualize Guru Buddha in front of yourself, as we just described, right? So imagine the Buddha in front of yourself. And encounters beings surrounding yourself, right? Undergoing the different types of suffering, you know. And then think the only way to go quick to help them is correct reliance on the virtuous friend, right? To receive the blessings and to go quickly. So with that kind of motivation, you make requests to Guru Buddha in front, and then, so first make requests like that. And then think that the Buddha is very pleased, Guru Buddha is very pleased, and first the white light comes to your crown and all beings, and that purifies and removes the obstacles, or pacifies the obstacles, right? So, and do that visualization for about half a minute or so. So then think you're completely filled with this white nectar light, and completely purified. And then similarly, focus upon those beings surrounding yourself, and you see you have to act quick, in the sense you have to get the realizations quickly, and for that purpose you need good devotion, and for that purpose you request the Guru Buddha in front. And this time yellow light comes to your crown and all beings, and that bestows the imprints of the realizations, right? So also do that visualization for about half a minute or so. And then think you're completely filled with this yellow nectar light, right? Your mind is kind of this moisture suitable to get a realization, you know. And then combine the insights we got of the meditation this morning and combine it with what we are doing now, meaning if you really look at sentient beings, and they really need you to help them, and they really need that quickly, because the longer you wait, the more they suffer, you know. So then you think, I need enlightenment quickly. And the way to do that, as we saw with the benefits, is correct reliance on the virtuous friend, right? So then you come close to Buddhahood, we saw, you know, because if you follow the instructions, and that brings you close to Buddhahood, right? And the correct reliance to thought and action will also generate the great realizations of the grounds and paths and increase them, you know, as we saw as well, you know. And then, and all future lifetimes never be parted, and you could quickly progress because of that, and never fall to difficult states where progress is difficult, you know. So, and you will just get the right conditions to practice. So look at those benefits of correct reliance for yourself, recall them as we went over now in a summary for about a minute or so, yeah. So to have a short conclusion here first, that you see, as true, I need that enlightenment quickly. And the only way to do that is correct reliance on the virtuous friend, right? So first come to that conclusion and focus on that for about half a minute. And then see, the way to do that is to not see the faults in the teachers, right? And try to see them as an emanation, you know, of a Buddha. And, you know, and they also are, they're engaging in the activities of the Buddhas, you know. Beyond those activities, we cannot find any other activities of the Buddha, right? And there's still Buddhas and Bodhisattvas among us, so if they're not Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, then who else is? And our own perception we cannot really trust, right? The way things appear to us is maybe not the reality, you know. So look at those 4 points in order to see that those teachers you have, they might be emanations, right? Emanations of the Buddhas themselves, or Bodhisattvas themselves, you know. So analyze that for yourself for about a minute or two. And I come to a conclusion that says that maybe they are emanations, right? And they engage in these activities, they should be. And my own perception I cannot trust, So come to the conclusion that the virtuous friends are kind of, emanations of the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, So come to that conclusion and focus on that conclusion for about half a minute. And then to conclude, to make request to Guru Buddha in front to bestow blessings to really have these realizations, to be developed. In order to progress quickly, so then make a request to the Buddha in front to do that. And then the Buddha is very pleased. Comes to the crown of your head and imagine first facing the same direction as you were facing, The throne dissolves into a lotus, and then Guru Buddha becomes smaller, and then descends to your crown, throat, and then at the level of your heart, imagine the Buddha dissolves into light, and you become one with the qualities of Guru Buddha, right? So you can feel a little bit of happiness or sensation or bliss at the heart, and I think you get the qualities of the mind of the Buddha, So then we delegate. Chanjo semjo rimboche magye pana ngegu chi gyabai nyamba meba yang gone gonde belwa sho toni tawa rimbo magye pana ngegu chi gyabai nyamba meba gone gonde belwa sho gyawa gunde yanda lama da dame chugi bela lonjensin Sada lamgi yundan rajani doje changi koba nyudo sho. Okay.